Mama and Daddy always planted flowers in the garden. Well, that's okra, but it still has pretty flowers. See all the rosinnias? Welcome back. Thanks for tuning in again to my channel, just talking about all kinds of stuff. Mainly things from my childhood in rural eastern North Carolina. Today we're going to talk about okra. So, okra, for those of you who don't know, dum, 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 delicious. It is a subtropical plant. It will grow here in the south. It is not frost tolerant, so once frost comes, your okra crop's done. It comes in green and red varieties. And when I say green and red varieties, we're talking about the actual pod itself. These are the immature seed pods. There are a lot of different names for okra. Some of the more common or popular names, or names that I just thought were kind of cool. Okra, ladyfinger, and in the Twalang people's language, they're from the Gold Coast of Africa, it's called Nkuman. I'm not really sure how to say that, so if somebody does, please share it with me because I'd love to know the correct pronunciation. And another word comes from the Angola people, Ngombo, Ngumbo, gumbo. That's where the word gumbo comes from in Creole. Interesting stuff. Okra was first grown and developed in Ethiopia. As early as the 12th century, there are records that the Egyptians were actually growing okra for consumption. It's low in fat, high in fiber, low in calories. Actually, it's not low in fat. It's almost completely fat-free. So it's one of those vegetables, if you love it, it's great for you. In 1627 in the Carolinas, because that would have been before North Carolina and South Carolina were separated as states, it was just, or colonies, it was just the Carolinas, 12 pounds of okra sold for the huge sum of 12 shillings. So it's an affordable food. It's a food that's grown easily, or grows easily, and if you've never had it, I really challenge you to try it. It's delicious. Some other fun facts about okra. I had to write them down as a cheat sheet because I couldn't remember them. It is a member of the mallow family, which is the same family that cotton's in. If you have ever seen a cotton blossom, I would have picked one to show you, but where I live currently, there's not a lot of cotton fields. A cotton blossom looks very similar to an okra blossom. Very similar. The pods can grow from 3 inches to 10 inches long. I prefer mine very short, very small. To me, these are the most tender. I will occasionally, pods up to this size are good. And this is what I mean for fresh eating. If I'm going to dry or preserve it, as you'll see later, I don't mind a little bit bigger. But for fresh eating, for boiling or frying, that's the size I like. Okra seeds can actually be toasted and used for a coffee substitute. I've never tried it because I'm not a huge coffee drinker, so I'd be interested if any of you have. If you have, please comment below and let me know. Okra is also high in vitamins A, C, B complex, and the mineral of calcium. So it's kind of a win-win vegetable. What I'd like to talk about next is how to eat okra. You can just eat it fresh. I did not know anybody that did that until I recently saw a YouTuber in her garden, and she's like, oh yeah, we eat it fresh all the time, and she just started munching on the pods. I tried it with some fresh from the garden. It's tasty. Different taste, but definitely is still okra. Most people's introduction to okra is fried. You can fry okra, not necessarily the healthiest. It does away completely with that fat-free claim. Boiled is probably one of my favorite ways to eat it. It's nothing simpler than to boil some okra. A lot of people don't like it because it does have a lot of mucilage, so it's slimy. It just doesn't bother me. I guess it's just habit. Growing up, my parents really liked fried okra but not boiled okra. My sister and I would eat boiled. I would go to my grandparents who lived behind us all the time, and grandmama would make boiled okra, so it was always a fight to see who could get it first. Anyway, today we're going to talk about boiling, frying, as well as dehydrating okra. Yes, you can dehydrate okra. I hope you will give it a shot. If you are live in an area where you can find fresh okra in the grocery store, it's generally not very expensive. Buy some, try some of these tricks and tips. If you live in an area that has a pretty long growing season, I highly recommend you give okra a shot in growing this year. Okay, well, we'll circle back around at the end and see the different things that we were able to make today. Thanks. I got from my parents. First, we're going to boil it. So to a pot of water, you're going to want to add a little bit of salt, a little bit of some kind of a fat, a lipid product. All good Southern cooks should have some bacon grease laying around. That's what I'm using. If you're a vegetarian or vegan, feel free to use something else. My grandmother used to add a little bit of vinegar to the water because she said it helped with the sliminess. Feel free. I generally don't because I don't cook my okra that long. Generally, I only cook my okra until it is fork tender, and that allows me to not have to have all that slimy mucinogenic aftertaste really to deal with that so many people find off-putting when they do eat okra. As you can see in this picture of the okra boiling in the pot, the color is going to change a little bit. If your okra gets extremely dark when you finish cooking it, you really cooked it a long time and it's going to probably be a little bit slimy. If you cook red okra, you're going to also see the color change in the pods as it's cooking. Now I'm going to show you how to make an okra cake so you can get some of that fried okra taste with not using as much oil and fat as you would traditionally. You can do this either from fresh or boiled pre-cooked okra. This is the okra we just boiled. I decided just to utilize it to show you what I was talking about. See, look at that color on the plate. It's a little bit deeper, it's a little bit darker. That's because this okra has been cooked, so you'll definitely see the change. All I'm doing here is cutting the tops off of the okra. You could do this by hand, but I find it quicker. Right now, I'm just going ahead and adding some pepper. I'm just showing you that I use Penzeys pepper. I love Penzeys spices. They're great. If you have a store near you, check them out. If not, you can always check them online. This is not sponsored. I just find them excellent. I just added a little bit of salt. I use smoked salt. That's why it's kind of gray colored, and a spoonful of all-purpose flour. Now you're going to blend it till everything's combined. If you're using raw okra, you may want to add an egg as a binder. Now you can see that it comes together very easily. It's able to make a patty or a croquette, as my great-grandmother would have called them. Now we're going to go ahead and crisp them or fry them. You could bake them, though I think they're better cooked this way. I'm just taking a griddle or a frying pan. My griddle happened to be out, so why not use it? That was a little bit of actual lard that I put on the griddle. We'll talk about lard another day. Lard is a wonderful thing to be used sparingly. Now you're going to see how much moisture really has come out of this product. You're going to see that it is thicker, easily to be patted out, even though it still does have a little bit of sticky tackiness from it. Part of that's the okra itself, and part of that is actually coming from the flour that helped make a paste. Pat it out into a nice little patty, however thick you want it. I would suggest keeping it on the thinner side, because once I put this down, I'm going to pat it out a little bit more to get it really good and connected with the griddle, which is already preheated, by the way. You're going to want to let this cook until it is actually able to be flipped. So just like you would cook a pancake, it's got to be solid on the bottom to flip it. Same concept. Here I'm flipping it, and you can see mine's really charred because I have the heat up extremely high. Cook it however you want, but I like this texture and I like a little bit of the crunch. As you can see, it holds together. It does work as a patty. I've never thought about it, but you know, this would be a great idea to add in some extra vegetables, maybe some additional spices, and use this as a hamburger substitute in sandwiches. I don't see why it wouldn't work. It's something I definitely ought to give a try later on. Say you don't want to have that much grilled or boiled okra. You can always dehydrate it. Here I'm slicing up some okra, Make sure it is tender. If your knife shows resistance trying to cut through it, obviously you're going to want to discard it. I'm putting this on the tray of my Excalibur dehydrator. Excalibur makes a great dehydrator. I actually picked this one up on Marketplace through Facebook a few years ago for a very reasonable price. They do run into several $100s on up, which is something that I'm just not willing or prepared to pay for a dehydrator. I do find that dehydrating food is something that will definitely save space in your home, especially if you're planning on using it within the year or less. This is just a shot of showing you what the trays look like inside the dehydrator. Here I am putting the cover on. Mine actually has a list that tells you the temperature. Vegetables, 125. Here is the dehydrated okra. This is about 6 trays full. As you can see, water content's very high, so it goes down to next to nothing. And you want to dehydrate it till it easily crumbles. If you wanted to use this for a thickener, you could put it through a food processor or a spice mill. Okay, so we talked about okra. We talked about boiling it, frying it, dehydrating it. I didn't go into detail about how to batter and fry it like you get in restaurant style, because most people do realize how to do that. Plus, that's something that's super easy to find on the internet. That's the way most people are introduced to okra and what comes to mind when most people think about it. I think next video we do, I think I'm going to talk about some of the carbohydrates, bread products that were very common for me growing up. Cornbread and flour bread. Probably not going to talk about biscuits. They deserve a video of their own. But I will see you next time, and thank you so much for joining me.